My Hero Academia All Grown Up. Chapter 2. Bakugou watched from the back of the room as Uraraka rushed into the conference room a few minutes before the briefing meeting started. She looked like shit. He wanted to roll his eyes so bad. Who the fuck drinks that much on a Wednesday night? Did she not know she had work in the morning? She smiled at Kirishima as the red-haired buffoon waved at her, but instead of coming to talk to them, she sunk down in a chair toward the front of the room. Bakugou avoided looking at his friend at all costs, knowing Kirishima would make some smart-ass remark if he did. Bakugou watched as Uraraka gulped down half her water bottle and rested her head on her arms. Before he could form a coherent insult in his mind, the meeting was starting. A kiss-ass sidekick was leading the briefing that morning. Good morning, everyone. The sidekick had a ridiculous getup on. He had some kind of unimpressive water quirk, so he looked like a damn dolphin. We have been having a very slow week, as you all know, but we fully expect to see you all still on your guard. We've heard rumors from our contacts that something big might be going down in the near future. Bakugou tuned the dolphin out. He already knew all this shit because he was the only one in the office that read his damn email regularly. He still didn't know why their daily briefing meetings were a thing. The higher-ups had insisted it was a team-building exercise, but Bakugou thought that they were all full of shit. Bakugou couldn't help but be mildly annoyed while the meeting droned on. His eyes glazed over the room as he observed all the mediocrity surrounding him. Once he began his career as a pro, it hadn't taken long for him to outgrow being a sidekick. He put in double the hours that any of these losers did, and it was finally getting him somewhere. If he kept it up, then he'd move on to supervise a small unit with his own little gaggle of dweebs that he could whip into shape. He almost pitied the fools that would be assigned to him. Ground zero, Bakugou was broken from his thoughts by the fish fucker leading the meeting. You will be Uravity's guide for the next 2 days. She's going to need to learn all of the patrols before the end of the week. He blinked at the sidekick before turning his gaze toward a slumped brunette at the front of the room. Fucking great. Whatever. He sneered and crossed his arms. Now he'd have to be stuck with Dekka's hungover girlfriend for the next 2 days? Talk about a shit week. The meeting ended shortly after that, and Bakugou rose quickly to leave. He watched as Kirishima sauntered up to Uraraka and gave her a quick side hug. He could faintly hear their conversation. It's nice to see some friendly faces here. Uraraka smiled. Kirishima beamed in that signature boy band way. Hell yeah it is. At least I finally have a pretty face to look at instead of that ugly as hell one over there. Both Uraraka and Kirishima looked behind them at Bakugou, who was scowling at them from a few feet away. Shut the hell up, Kirishima. Kirishima completely ignored the harsh comment and patted Uraraka on the head. Don't let this guy mess up your day, Kay? If he's acting like an ass, just let me know and I'll give him a talking to. Bakugou bristled with indignation, but wasn't able to get a word in before Uraraka playfully elbowed the redhead. Don't worry, she smiled. I can handle Bakugou. Bakugou sniffed at her comment. That was fucking ballsy to say. Hurry the hell up and get changed. You have 5 minutes. Bakugou barked the order and marched out the door. Well, Uraraka scooped up her duffel bag from her seat. I guess I'd better do that. Knowing him, he'd leave me behind. She rubbed her forehead as she recovered from the blonde's shouting. Kirishima shook his head jovially. Some aspects of Bakugou haven't changed at all, but he's gotten a little more patient. Just know that he's going to give you so much shit for being hungover. Figures, she muttered and moved to leave. I'm just going to take the entire bottle of aspirin before I leave. I suppose there are worse ways to go out. Kirishima chuckled at her remark. Just tell Mina to invite me next time. I always love a good girls' night. You would. Uraraka suppressed a giggle. She hurried to the locker room to change into her hero suit and ignored the texts from Deku. She'd have to get back to him later. When she found herself outside the building, she spotted those grenades in no time. He was leaned up against the wall with his phone in his hands. He looked taller than she remembered. His costume didn't look so bulky now, but instead complemented his physique. He'd tweaked it over the years to better suit his combat style. As she took a moment to admire his more adult look, he looked up to glare at her. "I'd tell you to take a damn picture, but I'd just break your phone." His attitude was the same that she remembered. She could already feel her headache worsening. This was going to be a long day. "It's almost like we never left high school." She muttered the words just loud enough for Bakugou to hear. He was irked by her comment, but he chose to overlook it. They had hero work to do, and that took precedence. "At least I didn't show up for work with a hangover. Hurry the hell up, we have shit to do." He couldn't resist the insult. She rolled her eyes once he began marching off and regrettably followed. Of course, the first patrol was walking straight into the rising sun. She wished she hadn't left her sunglasses in her locker. As she got into step beside him, she promised herself she'd never drink before work again. He preferred they walk in silence, his arms swaying at his side as they went. He noticed Uraraka looking around at the skyscrapers around them, admiring the sheer size of the city. She didn't look as ill as she had in the briefing room anymore. Perhaps she was getting over her hangover now. Wait, why would he even care? They were about halfway through the patrol when they rounded a corner at a large office building, and Bakugou was barely able to react to a speeding cyclist blowing by them. "Hey, shithead. Watch it." The cyclist screeched to a halt, and the teenager riding it whirled around on the bicycle seat. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." He pushed the brim of his helmet up a bit as he looked between Bakugou and Uraraka. "Hey, you're ground zero." Bakugou wanted to both roll his eyes and puff up his chest in pride. "What's it to you?" "This is so cool." The teenager dropped his bike and ran up to them. "Can I get a picture with you? My friends will never believe this." Bakugou could feel Uraraka's eyes burning into his back with expectation. "You almost just hit me with your fucking bike, dipshit. Why the hell would I reward you for that?" "Oh, come on." Uraraka meandered to his side again. "What's the harm?" Bakugou immediately moved his glare away from the high schooler to land on Uraraka. "If you're so keen on it, why don't you fucking take a picture with this moron?" The high schooler blinked at Uraraka. "Is she your new sidekick?" Ouch. Bakugou almost laughed at the kid's candor. "Hell no, she isn't. She's just a newbie to the city. And I don't need a damn sidekick." Uraraka's humor had died from her face as she turned her unamused eyes to the boy before them. "I'm Uravity." She paused, but the boy's expression didn't change. "You know," she waved her fingers in front of her face, "I manipulate gravity." The high school boy thought for a second, and both the heroes watched as the cogs in his head turned. Oh, yeah. His realization was a severe letdown. "Come on." Uraraka huffed and threw her hands up in the air. Bakugou smirked at the brunette. "Don't take it personally, round face. You're just not this kid's type, I guess." He saw her twitch in a way that made him think she'd punch him. Clearly, she valued her life because she decided against it. "Whatever," she muttered defeatedly. "Are you going to take the picture with him or not?" The boy grinned foolishly and dug out his phone, thinking his dreams were about to come true. "Hell no." Bakugou relished in the boy's disappointment. "Where the fuck are you even going that you're in such a hurry anyway?" "School," the boy replied dumbly. Bakugou huffed and tried to contain his irritation. "Hurry the fuck up and get on your damn way before I blast you there myself. Next time, be on time." The kid froze up for a moment. "Yes, sir." He backed away and scrambled away with his bike. "Kick butt out there, ground zero." "Enter." Uravity, right?" Uraraka wanted to scream with frustration as she waved a farewell to the boy. "How rude," she commented as he disappeared down the street. Bakugou was definitely amused now. "You wouldn't have wanted the photo getting out there anyway. You look like shit." "Thanks," she spat back defiantly and turned to walk away. You're not a 10 out of 10 either, you know? Oh, that hangover must be making her a bit short-tempered this morning. Bakugou grinned to himself at the endless possibilities as he caught up to her. Clearly I make a bigger impression than you do. 'Cause you're Avity, right? No, I'm pretty sure it's round face. Ugh. She clapped her hands over her ears and hummed, "You're not helping my mood at all, Bakugou." Bakugou was definitely on his high horse now. I don't bolster egos, dipshit. Unless it's your own. Uraraka rolled her eyes and tried to tune him out. Why did she have to get stuck on patrol with Bakugou of all people? Bakugou didn't deny her accusation, but simply chose to let it hang in the air unanswered. They continued their patrol in silence, but he kept an eye on her fidgeting hands. Damn, had that kid really bothered her that much? If you'd moved to Tokyo sooner, you wouldn't have to deal with shit like that. Bakugou found himself saying. As soon as he said them, he realized that he was breaking his normal character. Why the fuck would he even care? It's her damn fault for failing to make a name for herself so far. Uraraka sucked in an annoyed breath. I know. She released a frustrated sigh after a few moments. I just had other things going on in my life that made it so that I couldn't move here. Now I realize that it didn't really do much for my hero status. Bakugou scowled at her confession. Fuck if I care. He corrected his earlier slip-up. You've got a shit ton of catching up to do now. Too bad you'll never catch up to me. Uraraka almost laughed. At least you're honest about it. Bakugou was confused by her reply. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Was she talking about that shithead, Deko? He thought back to what Kirishima had told him at the bar and pondered the possibility that they really were broken up. Damn it, he didn't care, so he pushed it out of his mind. I don't waste my breath with lies, spacesuit. Is that supposed to be better than round face? She quirked an eyebrow at him questioningly. Fuck fine. Bakugou growled with indignation. Round face it is. Happy now. She shook her head spiritedly and smiled her trademark sunshine grin. You really haven't changed that much, have you? Shut up and focus on getting some work done. We don't have time to dick around. He ignored her comment about him being the same because he heard it all the time from everyone else. What did they all expect? Being a hero didn't exactly turn people into softies. The rest of their day was less banter and more patrolling. When they finally circled back around toward the agency, Bakugou picked up the speed. The evening light was starting to fall behind the skyline, and he wanted to hustle to get his gym routine over with. When they entered the office, they were met by Kirishima, who greeted them both happily. There they are. How was patrol? Fuck off. Bakugou snapped and stormed off toward the locker room. What's his rush? Uraraka asked as she pulled off the helmet of her costume. Kirishima shook his head playfully. His favorite game show is on tonight. Bunch of people wiping out hardcore on an obstacle course. It's his guilty pleasure. That sounds about right. Uraraka tucked the helmet under her arm. How was your day, Kirishima? Not bad, he shrugged. It was a desk day for me. My patrol partner was patrolling with you today, so I get to take a break. It works out for me, though. It'd probably be harder to get him to do anything this weekend if I annoyed him until then. What do you guys even do when you hang out? Uraraka couldn't help her curiosity. Kirishima chuckled at her question. You know, guy stuff. Booze, video games, bars. It doesn't matter as long as we have fun. Bakugou having fun? Uraraka teased. Has hell frozen over? I wish. Kirishima laughed aloud. He's just the designated party pooper. Wouldn't be a guy's night without his shit talking. Uraraka moved to head toward the women's locker room. I'd pay to see Bakugou being dragged around like that. I bet it's hilarious. She pointed toward the locker room with her thumb. I'm going to get going. It was nice seeing you again, Kirishima. Kirishima winked at her and waved. See you tomorrow. The agency's gym was packed with heroes fitting in their workout routines after work. Uraraka worked around everyone else as she got used to the gym's dynamic. At her old agency, the gym was almost always empty by the end of the day, and she'd have her choice of machines. Now, she had to wait in line for them. Beat it, extra. Bakugou snapped from across the room as he took his rightful place on one of the treadmills. He'd gotten here before she had, and was nearing the end of his workout. Sweat had built up along his hairline and soaked his shirt. As he jogged, facing away from her, he wiped his forehead with the towel draped around his neck. Uraraka finally got her turn on the weights and set them up for a deadlift. She was rolling her shoulders in preparation when one of the other heroes from the agency sauntered up to her. "Need a spotter?" he asked with a half-smile. He had tousled black hair that he had tied up in a bun and a square jawline. She'd seen him at the briefing this morning but couldn't put a name to his face. She probably couldn't remember because she was feeling so hungover this morning. "Thanks, but I got it." Uraraka smiled sweetly back at him and went to pick up the weights. He crossed his arms across his sweaty chest. "Are you sure? It's always dangerous to lift without a spotter. You could break your back with that much weight on there." She withdrew her hands from the weights and crossed her arms. "What? Don't think I can lift it?" "Didn't say that," he shrugged. "It just seems like a lot." She twisted her mouth into a thoughtful look. "Why don't we make this interesting then?" The male hero perked up at the suggestion. "Interesting how?" "Tell you what," she meandered over to the extra weights. "I'll add 2 more 20-pound weights. If I can lift that, you'll have to do me a favor." "And if you can't?" the guy asked conspicuously. She shrugged. "Whatever you want." This seemed to capture the guy's interest. He pondered the offer for a moment before replying. "You're on, cutie." "All right then." Uraraka hid her grin well. She dramatically struggled to mount the 2 new plates on the deadlift bar and put on her best face of determination. "Need a spotter?" he asked again as she leaned over to grab the bar. "I got it, but thanks." She sent him a knowingly sweet smile before easily lifting the weight off the ground, thanks to her quirk. "Hang on a second." The black-haired hero gaped at her. "You cheated." She released the weights to fall to the floor before shrugging and smiling again. "It's called hustling." She was so proud of herself in that moment that she had to smother her triumphant grin. After struggling with the lack of recognition she was getting from her peers and the citizens of Tokyo alike, it was satisfying to have something go her way today. She dismounted the 2 weights she added and performed her normal deadlift routine, all while the flabbergasted hero next to her watched. After she returned all the weights back to their homes, she brushed her hands on her leggings. Now for that favor. Bakugou was nearing the end of his 2-mile run, and that would signal the end of his workout. He bumped up the speed and sprinted the last quarter mile. As he did so, he spotted some shit-eating extra walking up to him looking like he had eaten something bad. Bakugou didn't slow his pace as this guy quickly passed by his treadmill, dropping a folded piece of paper on the keypad. Just as it landed, the black-haired guy was speed-walking for his life. Bakugou's face fell into a scowl as he stopped the treadmill altogether to open the note. He noticed that the guy was making it beeline for the door before opening the paper. "You suck." He hadn't felt his blood boil like this in a really long time. The audacity. Who the fuck even was that guy? Bakugou whirled around and began chasing the unnamed extra down. "Hey man bun. Quit running like a bitch and fucking say that shit to my face. I'll blow your fucking head off." The whole gym paused to watch the scene as Bakugou sprinted toward the door that their co-worker had just ducked out of. Eyeballs widened as another spew of profanity left Bakugou's lips as he gave chase. Uraraka grinned to herself as she wandered over to take up the treadmill that Bakugou had abandoned. Serve that guy right for being such a sleaze. It was too easy to rile her old high school classmate up. Bakugou finally caught that shithead man-bun right after they'd entered the locker room. Bakugou held up the note in his hand and burst it into a frenzy of flames. The fuck is this shit? He grabbed the guy by his bro tank and slammed him into a locker. Can't say this shit to my face like a man. The black-haired pansy raised his hands defensively, and sweat beads built up on his forehead out of fear. Bakugou felt a twinge of satisfaction when he saw the horrified expression he'd given his new enemy. You gonna say it, or am I going to have to beat it out of you? Bakugou threatened. I swear I didn't write that. The guy pleaded for mercy. I was just told to give it to you. Bakugou stared for a moment before releasing the moron and taking a step back. I swear, I'm going to fucking kill Kirishima for this one. No. The words poured out of the idiot's mouth. It wasn't Kirishima. I'd never fall for that. It was the new girl. I don't know her name, but I lost a bet to her. Bakugou blinked for a moment while he processed the new information. You lost a bet to Roundface? He could hardly believe what he was hearing. The guy was confused for a moment. Who? Bakugou hissed with irritation. Get lost, man bun. I don't have time for this. Next time, do me a favor and don't fuck around with uraraka. She's smarter than she looks. A look of relief crossed over the other hero's face as he hustled out the door, thanking Bakugou for his mercy. He heeded the warning that the older blonde gave him about the excessively strong brunette he'd foolishly crossed paths with earlier. When he was finally alone in the locker room, Bakugou smirked to himself. Whatever that poor bastard had done to piss off uraraka, he was sure it was deserved. He'd been around her all day and had gotten a feel for what her skill level was. She'd improved dramatically since he last saw her at their class final 3 years ago. However, he wouldn't really be able to gauge exactly where she stood until he saw her in combat. It was weird seeing that bubble of sunshine again. She drove him absolutely mad with her excessive cheeriness, but at least she'd developed a little attitude over the years. He recalled some of her more than witty remarks from earlier that day. Honestly, he was surprised she wasn't a high-ranking hero by now. Perhaps working in a smaller town up to this point really hadn't done her any favors. Luckily, it wasn't his problem. She'd just have to overcome that herself. The deciding factor would be if she were any use in battle. He recalled her fighting style from their high school days. If her combat ability evolved like her attitude did, then he was sure she wouldn't have any problems proving her worth. He mused about it for a while longer before showering and leaving the locker room. Uraraka took her time with the rest of her workout. She had a good feeling of self-satisfaction, so she decided to take it a little easier today. She'd had a crap day that was ending on a good note, and she relaxed in the shower for a while before changing to leave. When she stepped out of the hero agency, the sun had disappeared completely, leaving the street with only the light of the street lamps. She smiled as a cool breeze worked on drying her damp hair. She supposed it wasn't the worst first day she could have had. You suck. A voice spat from her right. I mean, at least be creative when you're trying to get me to beat someone up for you. Uraraka recognized the voice immediately and turned to place her hands on her hips. I think simplicity is the easiest way to damage your ego. If there were a bunch of fancy words, I doubt you would have actually understood what it said. Bakugou frowned at her from where he was leaning on the wall, his duffel bag on the ground beside him. Calling me stupid now, huh? If only it were that easy. She smiled and shook her head. TCH. Bakugou leaned off the wall and stood on his 2 feet again. What did Man Bun even do to piss you off? She laughed lightly at the nickname he'd coined. Man Bun, huh? And you told me I should be creative. If it fits, then it fits. Bakugou snapped back and leaned down to grab his duffel bag. I don't give a fuck how it sounds to you. I know you don't. Uraraka rolled her eyes. He didn't think I could lift a lot of weight, so I proved him wrong. That's all. Bakugou grunted disappointedly. You make him gamble for his life over a weight-lifting contest? Uraraka wanted to roll her eyes again. It was more than that, but it isn't important. I won, and that's all that matters now. Bakugou finally slung his bag over his shoulder and walked toward her, his eyes hardening into a scowl. Kirishima was telling me that Deku. He said the name with such disdain that even Uraraka wanted to flinch. Moved to America and you stayed behind. Is that true? Uraraka was surprised by the question. Sure. She shouldn't be surprised that Bakugou was this straightforward about it, but it wasn't like him to ask about other people's personal lives. Maybe he'd actually done some maturing since high school. Yeah, it's true. She dropped her eyes to her shoes to hide the sad look in her eyes. He scanned her as she looked away. For the first time since she got to town, she seemed small. Her normal larger-than-life smile was put away for once, and that made him feel, well, weird. It was like she was weak and fuck that. He hated weakness. Good riddance to that. That's the best news I've ever fucking heard. Uraraka reacted before she could think and punched him lightly in the arm. Yeah, well, at least someone is happy about it. Bakugou was stunned by her punch. It was the last thing he expected from her. He searched his mind for the right word to describe it. He supposed it was kind of cute. In a gross way, of course. That was weak shit, round face. If you wanted a fight, you should have just asked. Her responding laughter sounded like bells, and a genuine smile spread over her face as she finally met his eyes again. Her brown ones suddenly didn't seem so empty, and her stance didn't seem so sad. I'd kick your butt, you know? Bakugou scowled again to hide his amusement. Only in your dreams. How do you say it again? She looked up thoughtfully and tapped her chin with her right index finger. Oh yes, I remember. She playfully went to punch him again. Now die. This time he caught her fist in his right one. As she registered the blocked hit, he leaned down to her level. That's my line. She met his gaze for a half-second before she recoiled back into herself and hid her pinking cheeks. She floundered for words. No fair, Bakugou. TCH. Bakugou stood upright again and adjusted the strap of his duffel bag on his shoulder. I don't remember this being a game. Weak shit, round face. It's a real shocker you won in a weight-lifting competition after that pathetic punch. Oh my gosh, Uraraka huffed, attempting to muffle her laughter and her blush. You are impossible. Bakugou's expression didn't change as he moved to go around her. See you tomorrow, round face. Hopefully you'll bring your A-game this time. She wanted to retort something back, but held her tongue. Instead, she reveled in the brief moment of friendship she'd just had with Bakugou. It was definitely weird, but also felt normal. He never really intimidated her that much in high school. At least, not after the first sports festival. Now she just admired his undeterred drive to be the best. Even into their adulthood, his goals hadn't changed. He was still the same old Bakugou with the same old dreams. It was a comforting thought. Perhaps she hadn't missed out on quite as much as she thought these last 3 years. She watched him leave for a few more moments before turning toward her own apartment. As she started walking, she felt her phone buzzing in her pocket. When she pulled it out, she saw a familiar icon and answered the call. Uraraka. Deka's voice rang through the phone with a tone of relief. I was getting worried when you hadn't called. Yeah, sorry, she replied airily. I've been busy at my new job. It's kind of hard to find time to talk, you know. I get it. He understood too well. I'm in the same position here. At least nobody is looking at you funny all the time. I even had to eat an American cheeseburger. How do these people consume so much food in one sitting? He sounded flabbergasted now. America sounds so weird when you put it like that. Uraraka wrinkled her nose with a slight chuckle. And the streets here are so dirty. Everyone in the agency just ignores it. They all thought I was crazy when I started cleaning it up. There was amazement in Deka's tone now. Don't even get me started on their quirk laws here, because there are none. Everybody just has free-range use of their quirks without regulation. How they even have functioning hero agencies is beyond me. Uraraka giggled at his observations. That sounds like it's really hard to work in. Yeah, Deku replied tiredly. Every civilian in a 2-mile radius of an attack is leaping to be the first response. It's a shocker that more people don't get killed. The only thing that separates us from them is the ability to make legitimate arrests and actual combat training. They carried on their light-hearted conversation about America for a while longer while she walked. Eventually, Deku finally asked what he'd been waiting to ask since they started the call. How is your new job going? It's all right. Uraraka deflated at the question. Nobody here recognizes me, though. Deku could hear the concern in her voice. I'm sure they will soon enough. I hope so. Uraraka looked down at her shoes as she walked. Bakugou keeps making fun of me for it, though. Kaken. Deku's tone raised a few notes. What about him? Uraraka realized she hadn't shared this information with him yet. Yeah, he actually works at my agency. Kirishima too. It's weird seeing them both again, you know? Deku took the information in. Are you sure you want to work at the same agency? I'm sure it's going to be hard for you to stand out with them around. That struck the wrong chord with Uraraka. What do you mean? Are you saying I can't outshine them? No. Deku's tone changed to defensive. I'm just saying that they're media hogs, you know? The media love them. Uraraka grimaced at his reply. I think I can handle it, Deku. I'm sorry. Deku immediately tried to repair his error. I didn't mean to upset you. Uraraka breathed out slowly. I'm not upset. I've had a really long day. She forced the words out to avoid a dispute. Well, I'm sorry anyway. You're awesome, Uraraka. Just keep your chin up, okay? Deku's voice tried to comfort her through the phone. Unbeknownst to Deku, his recent comment had irritated her even more. She didn't want his comfort. She wanted him to motivate her. What she really needed right now was one hell of a pep talk, and he was not giving her what she wanted. I'm sorry, Deku, but I'm getting another call. She wasn't one to lie, but she really didn't want to get angry with him. Can I call you later? Deku hesitated for a moment. Yeah, of course. I'll call you tomorrow, all right? She knew that he thought she was lying, but she didn't care at that moment. Anything to avoid the inevitable argument if they continued on the path they were on right now. All right, I'll talk to you then. I love you, Uraraka. His voice sounded unsure of her response. She breathed for a moment and recollected her demeanor. I love you too. She hung up the phone before he could reply. It was weird how her bad day turned to good, but so easily turned sour once again. When she got into her apartment, she tried to relax and get the short argument out of her mind. It would do her no good if she went to bed angry. She plopped down on her couch and turned on the television. She flipped through the channels until she landed on one that piqued her interest. It was a game show where people were wiping out repeatedly. She recalled Kirishima's comment from earlier in the day about how this was Bakugou's guilty pleasure. A minute later, she found herself chuckling as an average man was thrown off a platform by a spinning machine and landed hard into a pool of mud. All right, maybe she could enjoy this too. The channel stayed on until she felt herself getting tired. Before she knew it, she was sound asleep, clutching the remote, and all thoughts of Deku had left her mind. So that's it for today. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. And if you want to contribute to the production of the next chapter, just read the information in the descriptions below.